At just 25, Kai Mizunari was already a global obsession. His face, strikingly handsome and impossibly magnetic, adorned billboards in Shanghai and LA. It was the kind of beauty that made people pause, wondering if he was even real. But for the past 3 months, Kai had stopped showing up anywhere. No premieres, no press, no explanations. He lived in a minimalist tower in Tokyo, surrounded by silence and the cool glow of technology. He refused to answer his agent's calls. Instead, he stayed up late, endlessly scrolling. Not through glamorous profiles, but through ancient poetry, language theory, forgotten mythologies, and obscure spiritual texts. It wasn't research. It was recognition. A magnetic pull toward something he couldn't name. He couldn't explain the ache that had bloomed in his chest since the Red Sky event, the moment Earth's horizon had turned an otherworldly hue. Something had cracked open in him.
It's like something's waking up in me,
he murmured once to his dubious assistant, Toma, while staring out over the Tokyo skyline.
I can't describe it, but this feels like something ancient.
Toma didn't even glance up from his tablet.
Kai, you're either being possessed by an old god, or you're spiraling into your Baroque actor phase. Should I book a shaman or a stylist?
Kai ignored him, dragging charcoal across his sketch pad in restless strokes. He'd started sketching things he didn't know he could draw. Spirals, twin figures reaching through fire, sacred geometry that seemed to vibrate on the page. The images didn't come from his imagination. They came through him, like transmissions. Toma had seen enough weird things working with Kai over the years, but the sleep speaking was a new one.
I swear to God, you were chanting. In your sleep. Full-on monk mode.
Toma told him one morning, holding a cup of matcha like it might protect him.
Sounded like Sanskrit had a baby with whale sounds and Gregorian chanting.
Kai blinked.
Did I say anything intelligible?
You said mirror frequency at one point, and then something like awaken the gate of light, which I assume is either a cult slogan or the title of your next film.
Kai tried to laugh, but the fragments clung to him like deja vu soaked in static. He remembered shapes, feelings, fire, a woman's voice calling his name through the dark. Those words hung in his mind. Mirror frequency. Kai had once been obsessed with mirrors. As a child, he'd wander the long marble halls of his family's Tokyo mansion and stop to stare at his reflection. Not out of vanity, but with a strange, persistent curiosity. He always felt like something else was watching him back. Sometimes he would whisper to it. Sometimes he'd ask questions. The mirror never answered, but it always seemed to know. That feeling never left him. He had grown up in the Daikanyama district of Tokyo, in a sprawling mansion shielded behind cherry blossom trees and private gates. His mother was a soft-spoken philanthropist who died when he was 8. His father, a brilliant but eccentric tech mogul, vanished into spiritual retreat shortly after. He became consumed with ancient energy systems and cosmic consciousness. Kai barely remembered either of their faces, just scents, echoes, and the sound of footsteps that never quite reached him. He was raised by tutors, guards, and the quiet, humdrum luxury of elite solitude. Every object in his world was beautiful, expensive, and sterile. His only companions were books, music, and dreams that left him sweating. Even then, he knew those dreams weren't entirely his. They felt like echoes from someone else's life. Someone waiting for him across time. Sometimes, when the lights were off, and he caught his reflection in the floor-to-ceiling mirrors of the Eastern Wing, he would pause and swear he saw her instead. A girl with wild, wind-blown hair and burning eyes, skin the color of sun-warmed bronze, paint smeared across her slender hands. She didn't look like anyone he knew in Tokyo. Even as a child, Kai had been fascinated by the occasional foreign tourists that wandered through Shibuya or Ueno, especially the women from places like Spain or Italy. Their accents, their darker skin tones, the way they moved through the world like the air belonged to them. He never understood why he watched them so intently, only that they made something stir in his chest. But the girl in the mirror wasn't just another tourist. She felt like a memory he hadn't lived yet. He didn't know her name, but he already missed her. As time went on, the boy who once searched for answers in mirrors had grown into a man who now made the world pause just by entering a room. He was beautiful in a way that felt deliberate, like the universe had carved him with intention. Sharp jawline, high cheekbones, lips that always looked slightly parted in thought. His skin was smooth, pale gold beneath dark, tousled hair that he rarely bothered to style. But it was his eyes that caught people, clear, intense, like sapphires submerged in storm water. There was something haunted in them, something that made people stop mid-sentence when he looked their way. He had 3 silver hoops running up his left ear and a gold cuff on his right. He liked the contrast, the coldness of metal against skin, the bite of pressure when he turned his head just so. It gave him an edge, something to interrupt the perfection. A reminder to the world, and to himself, that beauty could have teeth. He once said the piercings helped him feel real, anchored. A little pain that made the fame feel less like a dream. Directors adored his face. The camera devoured it. But none of it mattered. At night, he'd walk the city's neon-lit alleys in oversized hoodies, visiting forgotten shrines, old bookstores with incense-drenched air, and vending machines that whispered poems in broken English. Once, he stood in front of a temple and wept for no reason. Jazz played softly from his vintage speakers, while he stretched his spine into strange poses he didn't realize were ancient asanas. He called it weird yoga, but it felt like remembering something he'd done 1,000 lifetimes ago. He had a small mole on the inside of his left wrist. So did Alara. When he was 9, he fell off a bike and split his knee open. A white scar remained. So did Alara. In Madrid, Alara Montes lived in a crumbling loft that smelled like wet paint and jasmine incense. She was 35, though she moved with the kind of effortless magnetism that made people forget time. Petite, barely over 5 feet, but with a presence that pulled focus. Alara didn't just enter a room. She changed its current. Strangers often assumed she was freshly 20, 23 at most. Her skin still held the dew of youth, her features seemingly untouched by time. But her eyes betrayed something deeper, something ancient, something eternal. She wasn't flashy. She didn't need to be. There was something about her, the curve of her mouth when she was lost in thought, the way her bare shoulders caught the paint-streaked light that made people lean in without knowing why. Her beauty wasn't loud. It was magnetic, subtle, charged, as if she were an echo of some long-forgotten goddess still lingering in the human world. Even in her worn jeans and oversized sweaters, Alara carried the kind of sensual presence that made silence feel intimate. She had long, dark waves, usually tied in a messy knot with a paintbrush stuck through them. Her nose ring glittered faintly beneath the loft's warm light. Multiple piercings lined her ears, mismatched and charming. Her fingers were always stained with charcoal or oil pigment. When she painted, she'd blast metal music through a speaker, until the walls vibrated. Her hips moved slightly as she worked, not dancing, but shifting with instinct. Her art wasn't still. It pulsed. Elira had grown up on the southern edge of Madrid, in a sun-worn housing block where laundry flapped like flags, and the air smelled of fried sardines and motor oil. Her mother vanished when she was 5. No note, no warning, just a silence that became the soundtrack of her childhood. Her father, a stone-faced laborer who slowly decayed into an angry alcoholic, barely noticed when she walked out for good at 17, with nothing but a duffel bag and a heart full of unnamed longing. She found escape in color, in form, in the shadows between things. Madrid's chaos, its noise, its heartbreak, its clashing layers of old and new breathed into her art. As a child, she would sit cross-legged on the cool tile floor of her abuela's kitchen, listening to flamenco echo from tinny radios, tracing shapes into spilled flour. By 13, she was painting on cardboard scraps salvaged from behind bakeries, blending black coffee and rust into her palettes when real paint was out of reach. It was Dali who unlocked something in her. His surreal worlds, with their melting clocks and impossible geometry, made sense to her in a way reality never did. She didn't see madness in his art. She saw language, a secret, sacred one. His work gave her permission to paint the ache that lived in her ribcage, the fragmented dreams, the strange symbols that showed up in her notebooks without explanation. By 16, she was painting portraits in Plaza Mayor, charging tourists €10 a face just to afford sketchbooks, bread, and the occasional packet of saffron. By 20, she was living alone in a drafty attic apartment near Lavapiés, scraping by on commissions, side jobs, and a faith in the unseen. In the thick scent of Jamon Serrano and rain on cobblestone, in the duend of midnight guitarists, and the soft click of castanets, she found herself. Or at least, she found enough pieces to start building something sacred. She painted every day. She had to. The images came uninvited, visions she didn't understand but couldn't ignore. Lately, she'd been haunted by the same image. 2 figures, one golden, one shadowed, always reaching, always just out of touch. She didn't know what it meant, only that her chest ached with every new version of it. That week, Elira caught a cold. So did Kai. At the exact same hour, Elira painted flames for the first time, without knowing why. And Kai dreamed of drowning in fire, the smoke curling like fingers around his ribs. On opposite sides of the earth, they both clicked on the same video. Ancient soul myths of the mirror beings. At exactly 3:33 a.m., they both sat up in bed, breathless, hearts pounding. Something inside both of them had cracked open, and something rushed in. That night, Kai stood on his balcony, Tokyo's skyline stretching like a sea of circuits and static below. He closed his eyes. The wind was too warm. The moon looked too close. His skin tingled. He swore he could feel fingers ghosting down his back. Not memory, not imagination, real. At the same time in Madrid, Elira slipped out of her hoodie, standing bare-shouldered in the candlelight of her studio. Her latest painting still dripped with red. Her hands trembled. She felt heat bloom in her chest, then her belly, then lower. She pressed her palm to her sternum. It felt like a pulse, not her own. In that moment, across oceans and language and time, their souls stretched toward each other, raw, aching, and desperate. Their bodies ached with the intimacy of absence, the sweetness of almost. Elira closed her eyes, and somewhere, in another city of metal and mirrors, Kai's lips parted slightly. The desire didn't feel sexual, not yet. It felt cosmic, like an ancient promise finally vibrating back to life. A hunger too old for words, a craving in the bones, a longing written into the stars. And still, neither knew the other's name. But not for long.